Welcome to AI for Lawyers.
Welcome to AI for Lawyers with attorney Samar Shah and Lawrence Liu. Samar and Lawrence help firms understand and adopt artificial intelligence safely and effectively through second opinion law, a new platform built to make smart legal automation practical, not risky. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about AI in the legal world, what's actually working, what's hype, and where a firm should start. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. We're excited to be here with you and talk about AI and law. It's a hot topic with my attorney colleagues. We talk about it all the time. Questions come up, so we're happy and look forward to demystifying some of those questions for everyone today.
Let's get into it. We're going to be talking about AI in law today. What's real, what's hype, what to do first. But for anyone listening for the first time, can each of you share a bit about your backgrounds and what led you to focus on AI in law? I guess we'll start with you, Samar.
Yeah, I am Samar Shah. I am a patent attorney by training. I worked in big law at firms like Fenwick and West and Paul Hastings, done high stakes patent litigation work. And then I was at a boutique doing patent prosecution work. So that's a little bit of my background. I've actually been working with AI for about 20 years. I wrote my first AI related patent for Facebook about 20 years ago.
Wow.
And, I remember all the cool innovation that was happening at that time, and that has just accelerated. And then, a couple of years ago, I started an AI product called Patent Pending Made Simple that helps attorneys and inventors write their own patent applications. And that's how I, kind of got my feet wet into the space. I met Lawrence working at the firm. He's a client. He was working on a pretty cool invention, and we started working together and really hit it off. And, he came up to me about a year ago and he was like, "Hey, I'm working on this one thing. Can you help me patent it?" And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of working on something similar." So we got a chance to meet and we decided, hey, why don't we start an legal tech company and use AI to help other lawyers? So that's a little bit about my background.
What about you, Lawrence?
Yeah, so I've been in Silicon Valley for more than 25 years,
Wow.
going through multiple cycles of different technologies, up and down. In the last couple years, I was just looking at patents and contracts, and I can see that AI can really help with those kind of documents. So I thought, oh, what's an ideal thing to do? And then I met up with Samar, where we need the expertise, and I have the AI background, so we team up and started the process of helping companies using AI in their law firms.
Samar, maybe this is a question for you. What practical uses for AI are you seeing succeed in firms right now?
Yeah, there are three primary uses that we're seeing for the most part. And one of them is, document generation, right? That's usually the biggest use case, and that's what most people talk about. There are two lesser known items, right? So, legal analytics, litigation analytics, where you can kind of predict the success rate of a litigation, exposure, and things like that. So that's one use case for AI. It's a very kind of niche and specific use case. And then the other use case is helping firms run more efficiently, right? So automating a lot of the back office stuff. Those are the two kind of smaller use cases, but the biggest one is document generation, document review, and legal research, right? That's a big bucket that everyone is talking about, and it has a lot of attorneys very excited, but also very nervous at the same time. So, that's certainly something that we should talk about here on this podcast. And that's what most of my conversations with the other attorneys, that's what they're about. And that's what our product, secondopinion.law, is about as well. So I'm happy to let Lawrence talk a little bit more about that as well. Lawrence, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Like Samar said, right? The big thing that can be done easier is document summarization, document review, document generation, specifically first draft. On the other hand, we can see a lot of people are trying to use that in with ChatGPT and Anthropic or open source. There's a huge demand for that. But we can see a lot of these companies are beginning to say you can't use it in their platform because of legal concerns or lawsuits or whatever, right? So that's a challenge for them. So we think company can be successful, but they have to be careful on what they need to do.
So, gentlemen, where do you see the biggest gap between the marketing claims and how AI actually performs inside a law firm?
That's mostly. I think there's a big dream that AI can solve a lot of problem. You just put it in, and it will give you the answer and tell you what to do, and it understand what you want and process things very quickly. That's not the case because AI really doesn't understand the truth. It doesn't have concept of ethics or
Mhm,
judgment.
mhm,
It's basically today it's predicting the next words, but since it has so much document that it been learning from, so it kind of predict the right word. So that's the challenge of expectation. So a lot of people think it's like a genie, but it's
mhm.
not. It's
Yeah.
more like an assistant. So it will follow whatever you tell it to do. It will remember whatever it had in its training, so it can generate output from that. But it doesn't know outside of that domain, right? So the key thing is you have to have the good input, for you to get the right output.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, I think that's a really great point. The thing that was shocking to me, especially when we started doing research on this, is how much hallucination there is in the legal AI space with these AI tools. A lot of products and companies promise the world, right? That, hey, we have all this sophisticated technology like RAGs and model tuning, and we built our own LLM. It's not going to hallucinate. And it's just not true, right? The seminal article that I found was by Stanford Research. They studied all these AI tools, including legal AI tools, and they
Mm,
found that they hallucinated 1 in 6 times, right? So, which is a really high rate of hallucination for legal uses, right? So, there's this huge disparity between what these companies are saying that, hey, we have a very reliable, stable product, and then what it actually does, it hallucinates 1 in 6 times. And you see it in the news all the time, right? Lawyers are getting sanctioned and fined for submitting briefs and
mhm,
documents with hallucinated cases or hallucinated citations. And that's something the industry has to really grapple with. And that's really kind of the kernel of idea that caused us to start Second Opinion. We said, hey, this hallucination problem, people claim to have solved it, but it is not a solved problem because it's still a really big issue. And Lawrence, I don't know if you want to talk through kind of how Second Opinion Law does it, but at some point, I think that's a reality that attorneys have to grapple with, right? No matter what your vendor says, there's
mhm.
always a risk of hallucination with AI, especially in legal use cases.
Yeah, I mean that's hallucination. It's a huge problem because with the technology, it doesn't really um, generate the correct answer. It just probability of the correct answer or correct
Right.
word, right? Keep predicting the next word, and even though you put in the same prompt or same input to the same model, it can generate different response every time.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's why we think second opinion law can help a lot of company, even though they might use another vendors already. They can use us as a comparison to the current response. So at least we give them a second opinion. Like I was talk with Samar about like doctors and dentists. A lot of time we go to them and then they give us something that just their view based on their training, based
Yeah.
on their background, or based on their finance situations. So the same thing for AI, right? Based on their training, based on who's using it, and based on even the history. So by having a second opinion, that can give us a different view, different view of what's going on, and a different view of the response. So allow them to compare and say, oh, okay, maybe that's not everything is not there, or that's too much of something. So that's why we think even though some company might have it AI solution already, they can still use us to give them a second opinion because it's not nothing is absolute in terms of these AI models.
But Lawrence, what about before a firm tests a new AI tool like this? What should leadership make sure is already in place before they implement that?
Okay, that's a good question. Um, they need to have good policies for everybody to follow. So that's one of the biggest thing that can happen is some junior associate or somebody in the firm cut and paste their document into ChatGPT. According to some report, ChatGPT will keep all of the input from their chat interface because if there was a lawsuit that ChatGPT required to keep all of them, even the one that you deleted them. So that the huge risk. Potentially, they can use that to do their training. If they use that in their training, that can be extracted by another prompt in the future. So that's a huge risk for a lot of users that if they're not aware of the policies of the vendor that they're using.
Yeah, and I would add to this, as a lawyer, we tend to be a very risk averse bunch, right? So I would say, Lawrence made great points, but in addition, I would add that, you want to have some culture of experimentation or curiosity, right? Where, if the lawyers feel like they're sticking their neck out every time they use a new AI product or a tool, or if they're going to be punished within the firm culture for using an AI tool, you may have a really hard time with adoption, right? But if you kind of take small steps and kind of build that culture of curiosity and say, hey, let's see what this is all about and let's see how we can help our clients with this, it goes a long way. And, I think it prepares you for the future because clients are already asking their attorneys, they're like, hey, how are you going to use AI and how are you going to drop my legal bill by 10, 20%, 30%,
Mhm.
right? So those questions are coming. I get them as a lawyer all the time. And I think those questions are going to be more and more aggressive as we go. I just had a sales call with a prospect for our law firm. And that's the first question they asked is like, hey, how are you using AI to help us be more efficient and bill more efficiently? And, if you don't have an answer to that, it's going to be really tough. So I think a prerequisite to all of this is also just building a culture that's accepting and curious about this a little bit.
Samar, maybe you can provide some insight into this. What are some of the main risks you see when firms rush in, like data exposure, accuracy, client consent, and how are smart firms managing those kind of issues?
Yeah, I'll let Lawrence talk about the technical piece, but the biggest one from my perspective, from a legal perspective, is the review time, right? What a lot, the way it works with a lot of firms currently is that when a new project comes in, a junior attorney will spend a bulk of time, let's say 70 to 80% of billable time, just putting that stuff together. And
Hmm.
then a senior attorney will spend 10 to 20% of the billable time reviewing that work product and making sure everything's okay. With AI, that equation kind of flips on its head, right? So now you're generating, a first draft using AI, and it's like 5% of your billable time, right? Or even less. It's a few minutes usually. And now the senior attorney has to spend 80 to 90% of the billable time reviewing the AI output, making
Hmm.
sure there's no hallucinations, there's nothing embarrassing in the output that's going to be bad for the reputation of the attorney or the firm. So there is an inversion of how billable time is spent on a matter. So if you say, hey, our senior attorneys are only going to continue to spend 20% of the billable time reviewing this thing, you're going to be upside down pretty quickly, right? You're going to be like, oh, we don't
Hmm.
have time to implement and review all this stuff. The AI stuff, it just doesn't work for us. Like, we're going to move on and continue to keep doing things the way we've been doing. And that's not going to work, right? So make sure you have that expectation within the firm and within your attorneys that, hey, you're going to bill the same amount of time as you have in the past, but that equation is going to look a little bit different and how you spend your time is going to look a little different.
Mm. And from that technical aspect Samar was talking about, Lawrence, do you have any insight on what I was talking about?
Yeah, I think the other part to that is that I've seen in the past. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? So there's a lot of
Mhm.
risk of users or attorney just don't really know how to prompt the system. Just type in
Mm.
something simple and asking for an output. As any system you understand, you put in something simple or something not very precise, it would just generate a bunch of basically garbage. So what we do is we want to make sure our input is been through the process, and we do repeatedly fine tuning our input, our prompt basically, and then put in additional context to the prompt. So that's what we call it context engineering, right? When we put all of those in, the output is much more precise. And then we not only that, we ask the AI, what else are we missing? What are different aspects of the document that we haven't looked at? What are the similar document that you've seen in the past and things like that as part of the input? So our output should be much better than what it is to compare to a lot of generic input that we see a lot of them today.
And Lawrence, for a small or mid-sized firm that wants to test AI safely, what does a simple 30-day pilot look like in practice?
So the first step would be a setup. Probably a week. Take a week with us, talking to us. We talk to the customer or the client, and then we pick a set of team members that we want to work with, and then we'll train them, and then we'll also work with them on the prompt, the type of input they're looking for, the document that they want to use, and test that out. Number one. Number two is the next step is process the execution step, where the team start to use it and test out what's working, what's not working. We'll fine tune it with them. We'll review, we'll verify, edit the output. And then the last one is the week 4, basically the analysis part, right? We review what happened. We go to step by step. We analyze it. We put in a numbering system. We calculate how much they benefited from, what else do they need to improve on, and what else we need to improve on our side, and if there's anything fine-tuned that we need to do. That's the process.
So where are firms, maybe some more you can answer this for me, where are firms wasting the most energy with AI right now? What's an easy fix if that's the case?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would tell firms is that a lot of AI vendors are like, hey, look at this, our AI tool, and look at the time to first draft, right? And it's like minutes, where usually it's like hours with if an attorney puts a first draft together. And I think that's
Right.
kind of a mistaken metric, right? So I would tell managers, don't focus on that too much. I would always measure time to final draft out to the client, right? That's the key metric, because what a lot of firms don't realize is that when you use AI tools, your review burden essentially doubles or triples or quadruples in some point, right? So yeah, the first draft, it's a matter of minutes and it's easy with a lot of AI tools, but you got to anticipate additional review time and effort. And if you don't, you're going to be underwater, or the pilot's not going to go well, to Lauren's point, so you got to think about that. From my perspective, that's number one. Figure out what baseline of, like, how long does it take you to get a final draft out to a client before using an AI tool, and then see what it is after using an AI tool. And that's really, I think, kind of the, not to keep bringing up second opinion, but like that's the magic of that tool that we have, right? It does a lot of that review work for you and gives you second opinions on things that AI has generated, and flags items that are potentially hallucinations.
Hmm.
So measure that. Particularly if you're using second opinion. I know some of our listeners probably already are, but that's the one that we tell them to focus on is, hey, what is that time to final draft to ship something to a client? That's the one to me that matters the most, because that's going to help you figure out efficiencies. But because otherwise with AI, you're just taking efficiency in one place but adding additional work in a different spot, right? You're squeezing the balloon at a different place.
Hmm.
So that's the number one. And then number two, I would say, it's the shiny objects syndrome that we all have, right? We go to conferences, we talk to our friends, and they're like, hey, I use such and such tool, it's awesome. And firms will spend a lot of time, just like evaluating it, onboarding it, piloting it, and then you hear about another really cool tool, right? And you want to evaluate it, onboard it, so on and so forth. But yeah, I would say, have these metrics in place. How long does it take you, and what are the tools that are actually helping you get more efficient? That's what I would keep as my personal North Star.
Yeah,
And-
I want to
Go ahead.
add to that on in addition to that, the other part on the flip side to that is these models can be obsolete. They'll turn them off after they come out with a new one. So a lot of times vendors or don't keep up to date with these models in the back end. So we're working on that with our customer, make sure they have the latest one, and whatever they use is always the optimum solution. And that way they don't need to worry about, oh, do we need to use GPT-4, GPT-5, or Claude, whatever, right? So we want to make sure they can get the latest model, and it works on the best solution for them. So that's what we want to keep them on to the latest and greatest.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. I'm glad to do
Thank
the
you.
first show. Hopefully we get this first show jitters out of the way and, talk more about AI and the law. I know I talk about it with my friends all day, every day, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome stuff. And that's it for today's episode of AI for Lawyers. To find templates and practical resources for building your firm's AI policy, visit secondopinion.law. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, leave a review so more attorneys can learn how to use AI the smart way. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.